You also need the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, and the GATT 1947 and 1994. Well, we also take this chance to discuss about the Agreement on Trade in Services, I hope. And so I also list this agreement here so that you have to prepare for that. And next, the WTO Dispute Settlement Understanding is also important, as we may spend time in Seminar 1 to talk about that. And you also have to have in hand the 3 agreement in agreement on trade remedy package, including agreements on anti-dumping, on subsidy and countervailing measures, and agreement on safeguard. Last but not least, we will need agreement on the application of sanitary and phytosanitary measures, an agreement on technical barriers to trade, and all these agreements can be reached in the e-learning website of our university, as I have put them all on the system. So, it is also necessary to read through the textbook, because we don't have much time on the class, and so I will not, I cannot provide you a good discussions and presentation to put down prior understanding about the issues which may be discussed for each and so I need you to go through the textbook. In here, as you can see, that we have 5 main documents. And normally, I would love to ask you to go to the library to find out one of them, or at least, or 2 of them to have a look and to read throughout our course. In the first one is a very popular one, the World Trade Organization Law, Practice and Policy, written by Michio Matsushita and Thomas Schoban and Mavroidis, which is which are all very famous in the field. And the next one is the book written by Peter van den Bosch, namely The Law and Policy of the World Trade Organizations, Text Cases and Materials. Peter van den Bosch used to be one of the members of the appellate body of the WTO, and he's also a very well-known professor in the fields of WTO law. And the last 3 books we are also very interesting to read, because they are written by a professor who usually work in the system in about 8 negotiation round prior to the appearance, prior to the born of the WTO, that is John Henry Jackson's. Well, normally I may ask you to find out those documents by yourself in the ULaw system, but because we are running this course through Zoom right now, and so I have sent it to you, one of them, the textbook written by Peter van den Bosch, and but I have only the first versions, and so it's still very good for reference through the course. And so please have a look up this book and take time to read through it.
Alo. Bây giờ thì đã là 35 bạn à?
Dạ tính cả giáo viên luôn á cô, là 35 người ạ.
Ok, mình hiểu rồi. Các bạn ơi, cái slide mà nãy giờ mình chiếu á, các bạn có nghe kịp không?
Dạ có nghe ạ, nhưng mà âm thanh của nó giống như là nó bị ù á cô.
Bị rè đúng không?
Không rè mà nó bị ù, nó không có rõ tiếng lắm ạ.
Ok, thì có nghĩa là mình sẽ phải nói trực tiếp thì các bạn sẽ nghe rõ hơn phải không?
Dạ vâng ạ, cái âm thanh nó không có được clear nên là tụi em cũng hơi khó nghe.
Ok, thôi mình hiểu rồi. Nếu vậy thì mình sẽ nói trực tiếp với bạn như này. Tại vì hôm qua khi mà cái giọng nó tốt hơn bây giờ á, thì mình cố gắng để thu lại xem thử là cái hướng dẫn chậm rãi như vậy thì các bạn nghe có được không. Nhưng mà nếu trên thực tế bạn nghe không được á, thì mình sẽ nói trực tiếp và hướng dẫn các bạn qua cái này. Nãy giờ cái thông tin đến đó các bạn get được hết không? Mình có phải nói lại không?
Dạ có get được, là có một vài document cũng như là sách mà tụi em cần phải đọc qua.
Thôi được, mình sẽ đi như thế này nha. Bây giờ mình sẽ, tại vì như thế này khi mà mình đưa nó về cái trình chiếu ấy thì mình sẽ không có xử lý được gì trên Zoom, hay là mình sẽ đi theo kiểu này nhỉ? Mình sẽ ok. Mình sẽ thay vì để nó vào chế độ trình chiếu thì mình sẽ share nó như là ở trên PowerPoint luôn và mình sẽ nói trực tiếp trên đó nha. Nếu vậy thì mình sẽ chắc là vẫn quản lý được cái group Zoom này. Đây. Được đúng không các bạn?
Dạ được ạ.
Được ạ.
Nói chung là hơi lâu tech một tí, các bạn thông cảm. Để nếu mà có ai xin ra xin vào thì mình còn dễ approve. Rồi ha, vậy mình sẽ đi như thế này nhé. So as I have mentioned before that we're gonna have this book are necessary for our course, but you also have right now in your hands the book of written by Peter Van den Bosch, and you're gonna mainly use this document throughout the course. And so please spend time reading it. Next, I will spend a little time to introduce to you the structures of the course. Now here you can see that our course going to be organized into 5 topics. In seminar 1, which is we're going to have it today, we will provide you about the overview of the WTO. We'll talk in details about this content of seminar 1 later, maybe after this part. And in seminar 2, we're gonna go in through the basics principle of the WTO system. Now, mainly, I will focus on the most favored nation treatment and also the national treatment. And we're gonna spend time talking about these kind of obligation under the WTO system. And we also going through different cases in order to get a deeper knowledge about the requirement and how they apply these kind of obligations. Well, in seminar 3, we're gonna going through the rules of market access, which is considered as like a very attractive right that the WTO provide to its member, and thanks to the rules of market access designed by the WTO, It's clear on the barriers between different nations, and it promotes free trade around the world. And so we're going to talk about rules of market access here, focus on trade in goods. And if we have time, I also would love to introduce to you different barriers to trade in services, which you all know that play a very vital role in the world trade today. And in seminar 4, we're gonna spend time to read through the rules on trade remedies. And as you all know, that trade remedies is also a very important requirement to be controlled in order to promote the trade between nations. And so the WTO also provide different kinds of rules that allow the country to use those kinds of remedies measures. For example, in case of dumping, in case of subsidies, or in economic emergency. For the last one, seminar 5, now this rules on technical trade barriers are going to be quite new for both CLC classes and also your classes, because it's going to spend time to talk about 2 agreements of the WTO, preparing to control the use of technical barriers to trade, the TBT agreements, and also the SPS agreement, which stand for sanitary and phytosanitary measures. And I know that because you have no idea about the WTO until now, and so I promise that we will make it very basic so that you can follow on the rules. Maybe in the discussion time, I will spend maybe a few minutes to discuss with you the reason about why we have to learn about the WTO, because the system are facing with lots of difficulties at this moment, and you may not hear about the WTO more frequently in compared with maybe 5 or 10 years ago. And so you may wonder by yourself that why we have to talk about this, why you need to learn about the WTO. Okay. Is it okay for me to talk at this voice, or it should be louder or something? Please recommend me. Okay. All right, thank you.
Very well. Miss, I have a question.
Okay.
Since we are learning WTO without any basic knowledge, like international business law or something like that, so is there any Vietnamese document which is relevant that we could at least read to understand more in the English document?
Okay, all right. We have a lot, and maybe after this class, I will prepare a list of such kind of document to support you to going through this course. But right now, at this moment, you may we have on the WTO website, but the Vietnamese one, the website designed by our government, Vietnamese government, you can find that there's a lot of document in Vietnamese, even the law of the WTO in Vietnamese, you can find them there. And a lot of instructions, explanations regarding these agreements, which are going to be discussed in this course. And also, we also have a textbook in Vietnamese, which I have it here. Let me see. We have a textbook on international trade law, part 1, published by the Ho Chi Minh City University of Law. It also written and explain about the WTO system. And this is the basic document that you may use throughout the course. Maybe it's enough for now. I will prepare this list and send it to you, and so you can all have this document in your hands. Maybe hopefully next class. Is it all right now?
Yes, we can definitely access to the website on the internet, but however, the textbook right now, the library from school, they are not delivering any textbook anymore. So I have ordered several, but they respond me with a no, because this is not allowed right now to move around. So
okay, all right. So if you don't have the textbook at this moment, then this website, which I have mentioned earlier, might be helpful for now. I also try to find some maybe additional explanations, but nothing is better than a textbook at this moment, I have to admit. And so I try my best to find out and find them to you, and then you can check them on later for each issues which going to be discussed. If I have some document written in Vietnamese that I have been allowed to share, then I will put it. I will put them on the system, and so we wait until next time we meet. That is it enough to support you for studying this course? Okay.
yes, thank you very much, Miss.
You're welcome. Right. And now we jump into seminar 1, the overview of the WTO. I'm pretty sorry that because this course is designed for students who have the previous idea about the WTO system, and so it's going to be going through it very like in the fast track, and so it might be problem with your class. And so at any stage, if you feel that you are not sure about anything I explained, please just raise your hands and or you can write out your questions on the chat box, and we're gonna collect those kind of questions, and we try to find more time to discuss and explain on the issues. All right. And now for seminar 1, we're gonna talk about the overview of the WTO. We're gonna go very briefly through 5 different issues. First one, we're gonna talk about the mandate of the organizations, why the WTO was designed, and what is its functions. The second one, we also spend time to discuss about the organizational structures of the organizations, how it is organized, and the function of each agency. And we're gonna spend time to talk about that. And the third one, decision making. Well, how a decision is approved, and what rule the system follow, and how does that kind of rules work in the system, and also what to be mentioned here to fully understand about how the WTO running their system. Well, also we're gonna go very briefly to the sources of law under the system, and we're gonna go into the agreement system of the WTO with maybe at this moment, at this level, you have no idea about how an international organization runs and how their law gonna be designed, and keep together to make the system work well throughout maybe for about 26 years until now. And lastly, that is the WTO dispute settlement system. Well, what kind of punishment a member may face with if that member breaks the WTO rules gonna be discussed in this part. Well, you all know that a strong dispute settlement system will effectively contribute to the law enforcing effects of any kinds of law. And so it is important for an organization to build its own effective mechanism in order to ensure that those laws have to be obeyed. Okay, and so that is all the things we gonna discuss in seminar 1. All right. Now we jump into the first part. What is the WTO and what did they do? What are they doing right now? And what is the role in promoting the world trade? Now, up to now, the WTO is the only global international organizations dealing with the rules of international trade between nations. And these organizations provide the institutional and legal foundations for the multilateral trading system that came into being since January the 1st, 1995. Well, in short, you all know that our world right now is not playing or running as separated continents as earlier, or maybe in previous century. But right now, the whole world playing as a kind of united entity, and it can be working or running by that way, thanks to the law of the WTO and another organizations, namely the United Nations. And so that is the reason why we have to prepare the knowledge about the organizations in how the system can affect and put the effect to the world trade. And our countries is also a part of that that kind of system. Now here in this slide, I have prepared some basic information relating to the WTO. Right now, the main office of the WTO is located at Geneva, Switzerland, next to Geneva Lake. And yeah, they have pretty nice view there. The organization has been established, as I have mentioned before, since January 1st, 1995. And until 2021, this year, the organization have 164 members, and they also have the budget, which contributed by the members for running the system. Now, the number here is quite old, which is for 2000, in which I get it from 2015. Until now, there's a lot of changes in the system. And so the number is not quite popular at this moment. I will explain about that later. And the organizations will support all the activities, all the administration activities, going to be supported by a secretariat staff, would include about more than 600 officer at this moment. And the WTO was created in the Uruguay round negotiations, which is held since between 1986 and 1994. And these are very basic information that you can easily get on the WTO website. You can also get more updated information via that website. Please make sure that you check it maybe after this class. Okay. And now we're going to talk about the functions of the WTO system. Now, please have prepared in front of your eyes the WTO agreement, which is the Marrakesh Agreement for the organizations of the WTO. Now, you open the document inside of your eyes, and I will try to explain to you through the article. Okay. Do you have it? Article 3, WTO Agreement. Class?
Okay, give us a second.
Sao làm gì vậy? Đi học thì sao? Thì phải chơi.
Yes, I open it, teacher.
Okay. And maybe I show it to you all. Here. Okay. Now we are talking about now you have material one about the agreement establishing the World Trade Organizations, and now here in Article 3 you can read through the functions of the WTO. Now you spend maybe a few minutes to read through this article, and I will explain it right after that. Okay. Now we go shortly through the functions of the WTO. Now, Article 3 is of Marrakesh Agreement, and we may call this agreement is Marrakesh Agreement because it's signed there, or sometimes we call it WTO Agreement because it's established the WTO. And so I will use that name interchangeable throughout the course. Okay. And so here you can see that this article lists 5 main functions of the system. The first and broadest functions is to facilitate the implementations, administrations, and operations in maybe further objective of the agreement. This agreement, which means the Marrakesh Agreement, and also others multilateral trade agreement under the system. The second one, the WTO also have another important functions, which is to provide a forum for negotiations. Why it is important? You know that on the tariff concession, which may lower the tariff, and non-tariff barriers are getting throughout the negotiation among the GATT contracting party, and in the terms of the WTO is via the negotiation also. They try to create a forum so that all nations can talk, can discuss what kinds of tax should be cut out, what kind of non-tariff barrier should be should be controlled, something like that. And so when they get all kinds of agreement, they put them in the law. As you may see the list of agreement under the system later. But right now, a forum for negotiations designed and handled by the WTO is playing a very important important role in the whole world, because it supports country, it encourages different kinds of country, whatever the level of economic development they are at the moment, but they encourage them to cut down and to cooperate to lower the barriers between nations, so that all the goods and services and even investment can easily going through the border. And so that is the second functions of the system. The third one, settling trade dispute, and the fourth one, reviewing member trade policy. Well, these functions of the WTO are arranged in Annex 2 and 3 of the settlement of dispute. And so, because I have mentioned before that dispute settlement playing a very is a very kinds of important requirement for any kinds of international trade or international organizations to running smoothly, because it's a kind of weapon to in order to scare the nations that they have to respect the rules. And so dispute settlement system of the WTO will take that positions. And so the WTO also provide these kinds of system in order to help its members to have a forum to maybe to argue and to discuss more about what should be done, or how an agreement or a specific article have to be obeyed or have to be followed. And regarding reviewing member and trade policy, which are going to be run under the trade policy review mechanism provided in Annex 3 of this agreement. Well, this is also another requirement of the WTO. Well, you all know that each country has prepared their own trade policy for different kinds of periods in its development. And so those kind of policy may change. And if those policies have been changed, what kinds of effect may bring to the world trade, may bring to trade between different partners is also very important. And the WTO requires its member to do the trade policy review maybe for each 2 years, and etc. for different kinds of economies, depending on how developed or how those kind of economy may affect to the world trade. And this is the fourth functions. And the last one, the final functions of the WTO is to cooperate as appropriate, of course, with the IMF and the World Bank. This function is designed with a view to achieving greater coherence in global economic policy making. Well, here in these declarations, you have no idea about in detail how the WTO should cooperate with this agency, that is the IMF and World Bank. We never know what did they discuss behind the scene in different discussion. We have no idea about that, but normally they will try to cooperate to discuss about how to cooperate to like to enhance the trade flow around the world. And so these are 5 main functions of the system. Well, here maybe when you read through Article 3, you may not see any words regarding developing country. But here I also I would love to share about the developing country role inside the system. Well, the WTO is also designed for all kinds of countries around the world, whether it is a developed or developing one. You all know, I know you may know later, that the system is designed by well-developed countries around the world, by the US and the UK and etc. But later, the developing countries are more to join, and so the system also has been affected by this joining, and because they try to raise their voices and they try to get more benefit from the system, and so it's also like contribute to develop the system of the WTO, and in return, the WTO systems also provide a lot of benefits for this country. Okay. Now we come back to the slide. Excuse me. Ủa, như vậy cái này. Just give me a second. Okay, we are here right now. Well, now I will briefly through the WTO member countries. As I have mentioned before, right now, at this moment, the organizations have 160 members, which are spreading out across 5 continents around the world. and about 2/3 of its member are developing country. And well, the WTO may not be that much famous like 10 years ago due to like, let's say, different systematic problems. Maybe right now via the news you may read or you may hear about much more about CPTPP, about EVFTA, but not the WTO. But getting back to about 10 years or 20 years ago, when lots of countries tried their best to join the system, for some of them even with much higher price to get the membership, and then you may understand that the WTO do provide attractive benefits to its member, and even now at this moment it is still play a vital role in encouraging trade cooperations to further develop the world economy. And yeah, maybe although not much as expected, but it's still very important for the system. All right. Now I will go briefly through the history of the WTO, and please spend more. Promise me to spend much more time reading through the book of Peter Van den Bosch, and to have the idea of how they create the organizations. Well, normally the WTO is not appear right away. It have the previous versions, which called the GATT 1947. And so when you talk about the WTO, you need to mention the GATT 1947. And if we talk about GATT 1947, then we have to trace its origin to 1944. In that year, a comprehensive economic and financial plan for post-World War II reconstruction and development was proposed by two countries, as I have mentioned before, US and UK. And this conference was held in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. And in this conference, it is considered as a starting point for a new order of the world economy. And in this conference, these kinds of country, they suggest and prepare three cornerstone organizations to cooperate and to support, to encourage trade, free trade around the world. And these kinds of organizations are namely, first, International Monetary Fund, the second, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, that is World Bank, and also International Trade Organizations. Now, I have to emphasize here that three branches of the chair contain the IMF, the World Bank, and the International Trade Organizations, in short, the ITO, but not the WTO, okay? And so after the years of 1946, during the negotiations of the ITO, some countries, they saw a need for immediate tariff reductions. And so the US took the initiative in preparing a document on a general agreement on tariff and trade, which we have right now, or we call it with the name of the GATT 1947, okay? And there was subsequent negotiation in Geneva between a group of 23 countries. And so the result of these negotiations is a set of mutual tariff reductions, which we have the GATT 1947. Now, right here, I need to stop for a while to explain to you why tariff reduction is important for the system. Now, well, normally when we talk about international trade, and we might think about how goods, let's say our rice, can be imported to another country. Okay. Now, when a kind of goods would want to be enter into a country, let's say Japan. Okay. If our goods want to enter into a country, what things they're gonna be facing with in order to like to be open the door to get into the domestic field? What do you think? Normally, between nations, they raise different kinds of barriers in order to control the different kinds of things, human to get in and get out of the border. Okay, well, we don't talk about companies, enterprises, or other entities at this moment. We just only focus on goods, because at that moment in 1946, services and other kinds of supplier are not quite well developed like today we have. And so firstly, we focus on goods. And now here, when one kind of good want to enter into a border, they have to face with custom tariff. Okay, custom tariff. They also have to face with other kinds of tariff, which called non-tariff barrier. Okay, non-tariff barrier. Now, I will talk about non-tariff barrier later. So right now we focus on custom tariff. Now, if we want to control a kind of goods, we don't want to import them much. And then we're gonna raise this custom tariff to a very high rate. Okay, let's say 100%, 200%, etc. So the imported country have the right relating to their sovereignty. Okay, to design and to adopt and apply those kind of tax, and in this case they are custom tariff. And so if it depends on the policy, on the import policy of the country to decide at which level, at which rate they want to apply a tariff for each specific goods. You got it? And so here's the problem arising right at this point. If every country try to control the import from another country, and if each country try to raise their tariff, then it's like impossible for a product to get into a border. Okay, and so right here, in order to encourage the trade flow, here in this Bretton Woods conference, and also later when after they discuss to design the ITO, they try to negotiate for tariff reductions, and which means they try to cut down imported tariff so that the goods can easily enter into each domestic border. Okay, so that is the reason and why it is important. So as I have mentioned before, during the negotiation of the ITO, they also negotiate about tariff reductions, and all these kinds of reasons have been written in a set of mutual tariff reductions included in the GATT 1947. Okay. Is it okay right here for me to stop for any Q&A? Anything needs to be explained more about this history of the WTO? Student?
I think that we're good for now.
Beg your pardon?
Yeah, we don't have any questions.
Okay, and so you got you all got the main idea of how the IMF, the World Bank, and the WTO was designed in 1946, and also in this negotiation they also designed the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, as I have mentioned earlier, and so the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade 1947 was signed by 23 founding members on October of 1947. And this agreement has entered into force since 1948. And the GATT agreement was introduced as a stepping stone toward the establishment of the WTO. Because at this moment, the WTO was only suggested designed by the US, and therefore it has not been approved and it's not been to appear as an organization. And at this moment, there's only the GATT 1947 was signed. Well, this agreement is just only an agreement, and it has a far weaker institutional basis. And I also attached with the document the GATT Agreement 1947. Now, after this class, please spend time reading through the GATT Agreement to understand and to know what exactly they have get the agreement at that time. And as I have mentioned, the GATT Agreement have functioned for about 47 years later, after the years of Born, since 1947, and GATT run and try to organize negotiations without a formal organizational framework, and there's a sad story come later of this Born. Well, after that, the WTO, the International Trade Organizations, never came into being because its chapter, the Havana chapter, has never been approved by the US. Well, I think we may stop right here, and I'm going to ask you to maybe digging into the document, especially the book of Peter van den Bosch and other document of the WTO on the WTO website, to figure out how and why the WTO has never been came into being, and what is the problem behind the scene, what's happening at that time, which led to the fail of WTO. And so that is the questions which I may ask by our next class. And also for next class, I need you to going through the history of the GATT and the WTO, and to figure out important principle which has been prepared throughout different kinds of negotiation rounds under the GATT time, which I have list here some key points. The first one about trade liberalizations. The second one, non-discrimination treatment. And thirdly, reciprocity. I hope that you have heard about this word before. And the last one, safeguard and contingent measures. So you're gonna spend time reading through the document and try to figure out what are they and what does it mean by trade liberalizations, by non-discrimination, reciprocity. Okay, so these are the things you have to prepare until next time we meet. That's all for today. You think? Is it okay till now?
Yes, it's okay for now.
All right.
Thank you, teacher.
Okay, so you got on your duty to prepare for next class, and we'll see you next week. I hope you're gonna have a very great weekend for this week, and just please take care of yourself. And I hope you all have and your family also good health to going through this kind of very toughing period at this moment. All right. Goodbye.
All right. Thank you very much, Miss. See you next week.
See you.